Not sure how I want to start this video. I'm not sure how to bring on a topic of such nature. Given that the ability to convey this message is quite difficult for the typical mind to understand, I'm going to do it in a way that is easily recognizable for the self to get. So, yourself. Yourself is your characteristics, your personality, your beliefs, who you think you are, all the things that you do, all the things that you say. Oh, this is me. This is what you refer to as the me inside you. I am this self. Now, being is quite different than that. Being is what's here regardless of what the self is. The self's personality changes, the being's still here. The self has ideas in its mind, and yet the being has no ideas in its mind. I say this in a way so that there is understanding that can be grasped between the difference between self and being. Without this understanding of self and being, there's no way of breaking free of your mind and living in truth. The self that you hold, the self-concept that you constructed through your years of life, is what interprets reality. Let me make this very, very clear. Your self-concept, this persona, this quote-unquote, what we would say the ego, this ideas, beliefs, everything that you think you are, your mind, is what interprets reality. Not what's true, just how it interprets reality. The way the mind sees reality is always an interpretation, never what's actually occurring. And that's very, very pivotal to understand. Because if your mind interprets reality in such a radical different way than what's actually occurring, you can see how that can lead to a lot of issues in your life and living in falsity, living in an illusion. When we become aware that our self-identity is the thing that's interpreting reality, we could begin to question our interpretations of life to see how congruent they actually are with truth. But this only occurs once we recognize that self, the mind, the changing mind that we watch, is separate from being. Being is what's actually true, what's actually here. If the self is constructed by the mind, and the interpretations of life are coming from that construction of the mind, what happens when that construction of the mind is no longer being constructed? What happens when that entire construction breaks down and there is no interpretations occurring? Without interpretation, there is no self. Without self, there is no interpretation. Without interpretation, there is no self. There's no self on the being. We create a self on this being, on this body. We create a self. We see another body, we create a self. Sometimes we create a self for our dogs, or even our inanimate, even our objects. I don't know how to say the word. We sometimes create a self and we give them a personality. Our toys and stuff, we give them names and personalities. And when our mind does that, It believes even deeper that there is a self being possessed on the objects and what's actually here. So, again, our interpretations of what's here isn't what's actually here. What's actually here is being. So we want to form an understanding and practice of just being, so that we don't have to always live in falsity anymore. And the more that we rest in being, the more the self-concept becomes not our identity anymore. And our new identity is just no identity. It's congruent with what's being and what's true. Everybody's doing this. Everybody is interpreting reality in different ways. There's a situation that occurs. 5 people are in that situation. 5 interpretations of the situation happened. And now, what does the self do? The self says, well, my interpretation was the truthful one, was the most accurate one, because that's what I saw. That's what happened. That's what happened. I saw this happen. That's what happened. Without recognizing that your interpretation is only one way of seeing reality. And so, something that the self has to also come to terms with is that its interpretation can be very wrong, isn't the same, and isn't what they are experiencing. This will blast you out of a lot of belief system, because as soon as you realize that they are not seeing reality as you are, you could come to realize that you're seeing it through your beliefs. It's not obvious. It sounds so simple, but it's not obvious. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, and you don't think about it when you're going through your daily life. You just have experience happen, and you say, oh, that's how it went down. And that's how your mind was able to grasp it, without ever questioning if you were interpreting it even in an accurate way, or just based on what you needed. That's how it goes. You base it on what you need and what's best for your survival and what you went through. Never questioning that. So, if the mind interprets a situation differently than everybody else is interpreting the situation, who's right? Who has the right interpretation? And even if every single mind isn't creating an interpretation, the mind that has a less identity with its belief system and its ego and itself, the less identity that you have, the more accurate it is. Now, even if you have less identity and you create an interpretation that's more accurate and aligned with truth, does that mean that you're going to quote-unquote win an argument or be right in the situation? No. It does not. It does not. So, I've had an experience where somebody interpreted a situation completely different than I interpreted it. And I didn't catch that. I thought I was so right. I saw it one way. I thought it was fucked up. And so I brought it to her attention. I said, this was fucked up. She didn't think it was fucked up. So obvious, right? But because of my morals, or because my understanding, or because my spirituality, because my grasping of reality was so different than hers, the way my mind saw the situation was so different than the way she saw it. Who was wrong here? Who was wrong? It's relative. It's very relative. Maybe mine wasn't wrong. Maybe hers was wrong. Maybe hers was right and I was wrong. It didn't matter. You had 2 minds that were grasping a situation completely different, and it was causing a confliction. I was able to say, okay, I am not seeing it the way that she's seeing it. I'm interpreting one way and she's not. Maybe I was wrong here. Maybe I was wrong for not noticing that she could be accurate and I could be wrong. And so I apologized to this person. I said, I don't know if I was wrong or right, but I know I was apologizing for being wrong because I knew that I was wrong about something in that moment. And that wrongness was coming from me thinking that the way I grasped the situation was more true than the way she grasped it because it was coming from my lens of reality, which it wasn't. I think that's all for today, folks. Sorry if this was very bleak, very straightforward, direct video, but that's all it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to be all silly and cute. Go watch my other ones for that. This was more direct. We're going to go even deeper and more direct than this, but we start here. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.